externally looking out there and what's happening to us. Hopefully what we'll accomplish at the end of today is really take a look at the issues regarding ourselves and how we feel about them, and what we hope to come away with, actionable steps for daily living. Make it part of your life to be conscious of race, to be race conscious. Kat is our moderator for today. She is a multimedia journalist. She has, written for Forbes. She's written for the Grigio. She's done health articles. She's done political articles, cultural articles. Kat has just been in the business for a while. She's been hustling for a while, but she's a lovely spirit and a wonderful soul, and she's able to capture moments really well. So that's why she's here today. And I'm going to let her guide you through all of this, but I'm going to show you a little clip just to open up our panel, because in America you really can't talk about anything serious unless you make fun of it first. So I'm not a comedian. I'm very bad at punchlines, so I thought Dave Chappelle should do it for you. And once we do that, we'll let the panelists introduce themselves, okay? All right, let's get our Dave Chappelle.
You know this song? That's just my grandmother used to sing that when she cleaning up. That's a Negro spiritual. Black work song. Not everybody know about that. I know. See, white people, you guys might, what's the one you were? You did? Well, that's how you can tell what kind of work we're actually doing. I study that kind of shit. I do anything that has to do with race. I read a little here, see a little there, and I travel. That's always good. Traveling has made me a racism connoisseur, if you will. It's different from region to region. Anyone ever been down south? So you guys know what I'm talking about. And the racism down there was just what kind of perfect. It's due to a perfection. It's comfortable, it's out in the open. There are no secrets in Mississippi. Everybody knows the deal. Morning, nigger. Morning, sir. Not up here. You hit the big cities, man, it's different. It's always a secret. And we should do like this. We should keep our shit out in open, then a little. With limits. You don't want to say whatever comes to your mind. That might be a little much. White dude be walking down the street minding his business, and brother walk up to him, hello. You white oppressors, you slave master rapists of Africa. Why, hello, my big lip spear chucking friend. Touche, honky. So, Whitey, what did you do today? Oppress a new land and make the people there Christians against their will? What did you do, fella? Burn those big black lips on a crack pipe as you missed your job interview? Easy, Whitey, you're cutting deep. All this chit-chat has got me thirsty. You will excuse me for a moment. I'm going to go to the Korean store and get something to drink. Hello. You slanted-eyed, ruling the economy in our neighborhood by opening stores and taking the money out of the community. Wow. Good afternoon, yo. Browse around but never buy anything suspicious. After a while, that might be too much. You can't help it. If you're an American, you're a racist. We brought up from the beginning to think in generalizations. We never look at the individual. We rarely look individual. I'm a racist. I know I'm a racist. You know how I know? The other day I caught myself being racist against myself. With someone shaking on, I got mixed up. Forgot whose team I was on and shit. One time I was reading the paper, man, this story came on about this guy was suing a department store because they wouldn't let him play Santa Claus, you know, because he's black. And I was actually like relieved when the department store beat him. That's bad. But I wasn't ready for that. I wasn't ready for the idea of a black Santa Claus. Man, that shit would suck. We wouldn't get our presents to the 28th, 29th. Santa got caught with some pussy and man. I had to sell some toys to get back. Shit. Where are the cookies at?
Well, I did that because I told the panelists before we start to avoid generalizations. And the key today is that Dave Chappelle so eloquently and comedically put it out there that putting generalizations out there is really offensive. But only he can make it funny, so we're not going to try to do Dave Chappelle tonight.
Dr. Douglas Edward Ramsey. I'm teaching Africana Studies and Black Studies down at NYU, Wesleyan and Tufts University.
José Vilson, math teacher at Inwood Intermediate School in Washington Heights, New York City. I also blog at thejosevilson.com.
Candis Tolliver, I'm an organizer. I work with the New York Civil Liberties Union. I mainly work on racial justice issues, police reform, and police accountability.
Yahdon Israel, recent graduate of Pace University, applying my MFA in creative writing at Columbia and New School. I currently write for my website, alwaysdotherightthing.com.
Help us define racism in your own words. Give an example of personal experience, if any, and where you've experienced racism and how that possibly shaped you.
A million things that come in there. Well, I don't see myself as an individual. I believe in community. I believe in this community, and I don't want to use a personal experience, but it's the environment which we grow up. Is racism. It's environmental racism. We have food racism in our area. So to be specific, I couldn't because there's too much reasons. We'll be here all night. That's about it. Right on.
Anyone else in the panel?
I think there's a sharp difference between saying someone is prejudiced, even bigoted, or any other of those, discriminatory words, and calling someone or something racist. There's something to be said for having a sort of power structure that favors one group over another, whether it be individually, collectively, or even institutionally. Having programs like redlining and the way that opportunity gaps happen. For instance, if you're in a college and you'll have 97% of the people who went to a certain college have people prior years and prior years and prior years who have all gone to the same university as legacy. But if they're looking upon you, they look at you as someone who came in through affirmative action. That's the institutional sort of piece where we talk about racism there. Something that happened to me personally was back in high school. I remember I had this teacher who, he had been teaching for 50 plus years, someone who did a lot of great things according to the school. And I thought I was going into this honors class, and of course, as being the only person of color in there, I thought I was coming into a very good class, all grade, and the minute I get in there, it's questions about whether I can write. So fine. I start handing in papers, they all come in, the highest I get is like an 85, even when my papers mainly clear of anything but maybe 1 or 2 errors, and I start looking at other people's papers, they have red all over them, but they'll get 90s, 90 plus. And I inquired, I did what I needed to do, saying, okay, well, can you help me on this? And of course, I got little to no help. Go sit back down. One particular incident there, he had started asking people, so, what do you think about this piece? Okay, so what's the answer here? At one time, he just called on me. I had my hand raised, and I go, D. He goes, okay, he just goes, what was that again? D. didn't get that. D, the answer is D, and I just started getting up and I was loud. It was probably the loudest I've ever been. I'm not a very loud person. And he just goes, you don't really know anything. Can I get the person next to you? He calls on this person, he goes, D. Oh, you got it, you're doing well. And I said, wait a minute, like I'm here on the same level. I thought I was in the same par with everyone else. I would have been in this honors course. I had done all the right things. I wasn't too loud, I wasn't too anything. I had thought I had played by the rules, and in fact, I hadn't played by the rules because I still had this, I guess, this barrier over me, right? That was what was imposed upon me at the time. And since then, of course, as a writer now, somebody who's published, as someone who's done well in math and all these other grades, I find it ironic going back to that it's like, okay, I wasn't good enough then, but I'm still good enough now to do what I do on a daily basis. So, those are the things I think about.
Sure. For me, a lot of what you just said is really true to me. I think racism is not just a belief that one race is superior to the other or any other. It's about like a power structure that enforces that, whether that's through education, economic justice, all those different areas that sort of enforce the idea that one race is superior. For me, my experience with race has been interesting because while I grew up in Long Island, which is one of the most segregated places in the country, I went to my high school, or was all black. There were about 98% of the people who went to school with me were African American. And then I chose to go to an HBCU, which was a very similar experience. And so I didn't realize how race really affected me until I started to look out the world outside of those institutions and realized the resources that other schools had that we didn't have. In high school, like those teams we would play, this was into sports in high school. The teams we would play, they would have all sorts of like pools at their school. I'm like, pool? Where did they get that? Where did that come from? Or just the amenities. Their gym was a lot lovelier than ours, and they had all kinds of things that we didn't have. And I started to ask questions about like, why is that? That I can clearly see a difference in how their school is kept, and the majority of folks that are in that school are white, and the majority of folks that are in my school are black. And that's kind of started to open my eyes to the idea of race and how the different groups receive resources in our communities and across the city.
My idea of racism is like, I think of it as a larger infrastructure that, how can I say, hinders personal growth. So you're afraid to understand who you are as a person because of how it looks to everyone else. Because like as a black person, you're not supposed to do this. Or you can't do that, you can't read this, you can't read that, because if I do that, that will help me as a person. It may hinder me in like the peer group of my friends. So my personal experience with racism was in Bloomingdale's one day, looking for a suit, and older white gentleman comes to me, he gives me a suit, and goes, could you get this to me in a 44? Now I didn't even dress like I worked there. So I know there's times when I've even done it, like I've looked at people that look like they work there and I'm like, oh damn, like I caught myself. But then when he did that and I'm wearing a fitted, and I'm dressed like I'm not even supposed to quote unquote shop there, so I'm like, this dude's being disrespectful. So you get that a lot, and the thing that I feel like kind of catches me off guard with like the way racism happens is because you don't have a response for it. Because you feel like if you let it go, you've been chunked just now. And being from Brooklyn, you always got to worry about looking chunked, even if you're by yourself. So I was like, how do I get this guy back without getting in trouble? Because that's the racism thing, is if I say something to him, or if I swing at him, I'm going to jail. And it's like, well, regardless of how he treated you, you can't respond. So what I did was, I said, oh, what size do you need? And he goes, 44. I go, I'll get that for you in a minute. So I take the suit and I put it in like another section of Bloomingdale's. So I'm walking around and I hear the guy like, I gave this young man my suit. He's supposed to be with it. And they're walking around like, what's it? He goes, he points to me and he goes, there he is. And he comes over and he goes, where'd you put my suit? And I go, I put it over there. He goes, why'd you do that? I go, I don't work here. And then his face, like I had never seen a man's face so angry. Because it was just like the thing that kind of, for me, it kind of released a lot of tension because I dealt with the situation in a way that allowed me to not go to jail. And when you're dealing with a lot of institutional racism, regardless of what's thrown at you, the onus is on you to not go to jail, to not get killed, to not get shot. So it's like, how do you, like my thing of dealing with racism is how to respond to it. So it's always been that thing where like if you're growing up, somebody has a joke, you have to come back with something. And that being unable to come back is what institutional racism is. So it's like if somebody makes a joke about you not affording rent, that hurts because like I can't afford rent. And there's no joke that's going to beat what you just said. So it's like the joke is on a lot of people who are disenfranchised racially because it's like the socioeconomic plight doesn't allow you to fight back. So when things are said and when things are done, it's just like, damn, I can't even dispute what you just said. So my thing about it, like racism is just like being able to pick my spots of how not to get shot and or go to jail.
That is real. Why do you think it's important for us to talk about racism, particularly in the United States?
For me, the work that I do is mainly around trying to reform policies or laws that have the effect of discrimination. So it's important to talk about racism because it's hidden in every single policy that governs all of us. It's hidden in the stop and frisk policies of the NYPD. It's hidden in school discipline policies that force, students, especially students of color, into a school to prison pipeline where they're kicked out of school for minor infractions or they're arrested in school for writing on desks and things of that nature. It's hidden in, policies that decide who gets to live where and how much money that you're allowed to have. And so it's important to talk about it because it's not just about the policy, it's about what's driving the policy. What's driving the policy that says that you get a certain amount of time if you're caught with crack, but you get a lesser amount of time if you're caught with cocaine, right? So it's important to talk about race because all of that is driven, it's driving our public policy, which governs all of us, whether we like it or not.
Even from my lens as a teacher, I start thinking about the people who are in front of classrooms where they are culturally different from whoever it is that's in front of them. So for instance, you want to come into a classroom and if you look at students as people who deserve the best education possible, then you're on the right track. And even if you have high expectations for them, you want them to be on the same track as you had come from, then you're doing what we're being asked to do. Unfortunately, a lot of people come into the classroom with, oh, I'm going to save these kids. And I'm going to try to find salvation for them. And I am the one who is going to take them and bring them to some promised land. And if there's a couple of them who just decide to go off on their own, I'm sorry, I can't do God's work. And it's like, okay, well, there are people who actually want to learn, and you have to hold them to a certain, I guess, just to bring it back to even scandal. There are people who know that they have to work twice as hard to get wherever that they're going to get to.
This is Scandal the show?
Of course, yeah. Not any sort of scandal, like that scandal. I know my audience. I mean, it's so funny too because you're like, wait a minute, but why do we have to strive for certain people to be superhuman, to not try to get arrested, to not try to get in jail? And it's like, okay, but at the same time, you're trying to make sure that everybody's treated as a human being, and that's really what the ultimate goal is: to make sure that everybody gets equitable resources, get equitable treatment as a person. And I guess that's the struggle. So you have to fight all these years of oppression by working twice as hard. But people who are working in these spaces need to understand that they too have to work twice as hard against the institutions that try to get people to be subjugated, if you will.
I grew up in Bedford-Stuyvesant. It was poor and black, and then you go to Pace and it's rich and a lot of white kids. So when you have class and race coming at you at one time, you can't separate those strands because everything you heard about what you're seeing is what you're seeing in those people. So it took a while for me. I remember one time in class, this kid, one of my best friends now, he said Ronald Reagan was one of the greatest presidents in the U.S. And out of response, I was like, who said that? And I turned around, I looked at him, and it became my thing to find out why he said that. And then I started talking to him, and we started talking about things, and I went to his house, and I got to see how he lived, and seeing how he lived allowed me to understand where he was coming from. So it's like you get to see the type of battles you get into when you're you're cracking those codes with individual people. Like when you're getting across to that one person, and then they're doing that job with you, as opposed to trying to talk to groups, because everyone has their own different approaches and their ideas. So my thing is just personally, I feel like the personal conversation and trying to hone in on how people personally feel.
So does talking about racism, is that something that's considered, do you consider unpatriotic? Or is it something that someone would call you racist if you talk about it against the oppressor?
Well, whoever doesn't understand racism will call the person who calls out racism racist because they don't understand racism. Now, as far as being patriotic, I think we, people of color, are the most patriotic people in this country because we say stuff like no justice, no peace, and we've been there 400 years and we didn't get no justice and we're still peaceful. That's patriotism 101.
Our sort of slogan at the NYCLU is dissent is patriotic.
Right.
Right, and it's about challenging those structures of racism. And if we're not talking about it, then we can't be patriotic because we're trying to make us all better. And the way you do that is to start to confront the issues that are facing us all. And so, of course, it's patriotic.
I think it's unpatriotic, to be honest, because of what this country is founded on and the honesty of like how this country was built. So it's like when you're deconstructing the ideas that built this country, you are essentially destroying what this country believes in as democracy and capitalism and freedom and all those things that, those code words that like allow these systems of racism to perpetuate themselves. When you're deconstructing those belief systems, you are deconstructing what the country was built on. So I think it's unpatriotic, but I also think there should be an honest assessment of being willing to be unpatriotic to build a better country.
So has race relations improved or gotten worse over the course of American history?
I think we've come some ways with some people, and I mean that across racial and social spectrums. I think there are people who genuinely care and understand and want things to get better, but for every action there's equal and sometimes deleterious reaction. So to that end, you have a lot of people who frankly look at, easy example, you look at the American school system, 1954, Brown versus Board of Ed, supposed to desegregate, and of course at that moment there were, black people who said, and these are quote-unquote black leaders, if you will, they said, we really don't want segregation. We really don't want integration, because if we could help our own children work towards learning their own African American, their own, backgrounds, then we can teach them our own way, and then other people can teach their children their way, and that was fine. Those are the generalizations that were made. But of course, Martin Luther King was like, well, if you could integrate, then there'd be no basis for which they could, defund, because if you had all types of people in the same classroom, then you have a very economic plan for how to make sure that everybody gets equity across all classrooms. Fast forward to now, we have the most segregated classrooms since 1954. So to that end, these are the institutional things that, again, I guess, it's not conscious oftentimes, but it's very much in the institution. How do you have separate schools, property taxes, for example, will help fund our schools? Well, where are you going to find the highest property taxes, and where are they going to fund? So those are things that I think about all the time.
All right, well, we're going to move forward to our next topic, which is rage. So the first question is it safe to be black in America? Is it safe to be black in the world today?
Absolutely not. Definitely not. Every 28 hours, a person of color is gunned down by an officer, vigilante, or security force. As far as the world, anti-blackness is global. There is no way in the world black people are safe. Right now, there are genocides going on in Brazil. There's a genocide taking place in Haiti. There's several genocides taking place in the Middle East and Africa, all towards blackness. Blackness is not safe nowhere in this world.
Is it safe? I feel safe. I'm not saying that it is. I live in bed. This is like my whole thing is. I grew up around drug dealers and people that was murdering people, and I felt at danger in Bed-Stuy. So I didn't really think about white people because I didn't see white people that much. I had to worry about black people. And in small ways, like white people didn't become real to me until I went to college. They were just like they were not real. So the phantoms that I deal with, there were people that were dealing every day. But I can tell you that even with Bed-Stuy being gentrified, I feel a lot safer because of the danger I know I'm living in. Like, because I know that at any moment this can happen or that can happen. I accept that. That's a part of the life. So for me, it's like I'm on my grind until whatever happens, happens. Because like you look at the Jordan Dunns, you look at the Travon Martins, and you see these kids are getting killed for doing nothing. So it's like for me to sit here and then do nothing and then be surprised if that happens, I'm not going to do that. So it's like I'm going to turn up until something happens. At least I could say when I look back, I did something while I was here, because it's like you're not looking at the timetable. Like if you see that your time on this earth is like time, it's like really is temporal. It's like, why aren't you doing more in the time that you have it? Because you don't know when you're going to be here. And because there is a timetable on your life, if you're going to say that it's dangerous for you to be here, I'm trying to do something before I leave. Because I see that. Like, I don't know what's going to happen. So my thing is I'm going to turn up all the time. So to me, I'm safe because I know I'm in danger.
Right.
You know, originally I wanted to pass on this question because I realized as a black woman, I'm not necessarily on the foregrounds of people who are going to be harassed by cops or shot by cops or experience violence in my own community. But I think the problem is, even when how do we define safety? And what do we mean when we say safe? Like, there are the Travon Martins of the world, and we, with the Zimmerman trial and the Dunn trial, we'll see that when white people feel afraid, they are allowed to do almost whatever they need to do in order to feel safe. And we do not have that liberty. We can't say, I feel scared right now, so I can choose this white person because they are making me afraid, even though I often feel afraid. I had a conversation with a black woman where she expressed fear about a black man that was walking across from her on the street, and I said, I'm not scared of him. I lived with him all my life. He's always lived down the block from me. I'm scared of the white man who looks with a long trench coat that doesn't belong in my neighborhood. That's who I'm afraid of. Right. So when we talk about fear, it goes both ways, right? And I think that we need to stop being afraid of one another and be fearful of the systems that allow other people to harm us and get away with it.
Right. Absolutely.
So fueled by this reality of racism, how does it feel to be outraged and or full of rage? Do you have or your experience racism-induced rage, and what do you do to cope with it?
I'm happy being angry. That was pithy, right? I think more than anything, I think it's how you choose to use your energies and for what purpose. So in the education sphere, for example, I find myself being the only person of color, whether it be black, Latino, whatever have you. I'm often in spaces where they need a reality check, especially because, again, the people who teach and the people who they are teaching end up being culturally conflicted more often than not. So being able to come out and say in an honest way, in a very non-polite, because that's the thing with respectability politics and being polite all the time, you don't often get to the core issues. So if you kind of think about it in that respect, then it's like, okay, well, I need to be angry, because if I'm not angry, then I'm going to be very polite, and then you're not going to get it. You won't react, you won't do anything to try to change something within you, or you won't reflect, you won't really try to understand. People say, well, if you get a person angry, then of course they're not going to listen to you. I found that to be false. It really often depends on how you choose to incite others and how you choose to address that message. And if you can get them to really be angry with you, then that's even more powerful.
Right. Well, James Baldwin said to be a Negro in America, to be conscious, is to be in a constant state of rage.
Yes.
And I totally agree, because I'm reminded, first of all, memories, believe it or not, science has proven that memories are ancestral. So, and you get up every day and you see the after effects of one of the worst atrocities in human history. And every day you're reminded of these atrocities. It's no way you could be sane. I think the strong go crazy and the weak people stay sane.
I could say that at Pace there was a kid who walked up to me and asked during Halloween, he said, "Can I be 2 Chainz?" He said, "What would you think if I was 2 Chainz for Halloween?" And I knew where he was going. He was going towards blackface. And there was 2 black security guards standing right next to him. And I go, "What do you mean by that?" And he goes, I'm like, "You gonna wear the dress?" He's like, "Yeah." And I'm like, "So you gonna wear the chains?" "Yeah." He's like, "Yeah, but I want to do it." And I was like, "So you want to do black?" He's like, "Yeah, you think it'll be all right?" And I said, "Let me tell you something. Do what you want. I'm going to tell you honestly, that I'm not going to save you from yourself.
Right.
Like, you're not going to use me as a reason as to why you did something.
Right.
Like, oh, yeah, well, your Don said it was okay, so cool, because there's black kids that don't like me. So it's like, well, we don't like your Don either. So now we definitely don't like you. But the whole thing that scared me, and in terms of like, I was so angry, but when I saw the security guards, and these are people who are paid to keep kids safe, me and him together, and he's being as disrespectful to me as he's being to them, and the fact that he don't even see that he's disrespecting people who have to protect his life, that kind of gives me some, like, it's kind of sobering to see how much they're confronted with danger as well, and how much they don't realize it. Because like to the other question, like, I know I'm in danger. And like these kids that like kind of just walk around in La La Land, like they're in danger too, but the system protects them in such a way that they don't get to grow up. So there's a lot of things that I got that kind of like helped my character and, you know, taught me how to deal with that situation, like the one I did in Bloomingdale. So I got to a point where I could fight back without getting attacked. And it's like those lessons only come from being angry to the point where you go, how do I get back at this? So to me, it's like, it helps me see clearer in a lot of ways. Because I'm able to see the situation for what it is, and I'm able to be honest. And the thing I basically told him was, I said, you can do what you want. I'm saying, but I'm gonna let you know, every black person that sees you on blackface is gonna lynch you in their hearts. They're not gonna say nothing to you. But the way you're gonna feel those sights, and he didn't do it. Now I don't know why he didn't do it, but the thing was, he didn't do it. So for me, that was effective, because I kept the kid from possibly being attacked. So.
What does rage do to your psyche, your emotional and overall well-being?
It's discouraging. I was teaching at NYU. My content is very race-driven, and I learned the hard way. I got let go. The university let me go because these conversations are not safe, especially in PWIs are predominantly white institutions. So my rage cost me, and I'm certain it's going to cost me a lot more.
You know, I think, for me, I'm an organizer. When I think about like rage, I think about action. Like, what can we do?
Right.
How can we mobilize people? What direction should we be taking next? And it's really hard when you are dealing with a system that's so racist overall, because it's so hard to figure out how you make change. And people get tired of incremental change, even though, like, as an organizer, you just see like all of these are steps in the right direction. But when you feel like, you know, people don't want a baby step, they want like real overhaul the system, start all over, blow it up, let's start again, let's start with equity, let's do this fair this time. It's really hard to keep people encouraged. And I find when my rage often immediately turns into like depression. I remember after the Zimmerman trial, I just cried for a long time, and I was like at work crying. I was like, don't come in here, don't talk to me, don't ask me what I feel about this, because, you know, I was so angry, but I just didn't know what to do but to feel sad. I just felt sort of helpless. But then it quickly turns into like, all right, what's our next step?
Right.
What about action items that we can do to start to move in a different direction?
What this also reminds me of too is that there are times when you'll have a big town hall dedicated to an affinity group, or even a panel such as today's. And, you know, people will come out, you know, there'll be a lot of issues being put on the floor. Michael Dunn, Renisha McBride, all these really angry situations. But then, you know, people come out, well, one group of people come out, you know, pretty happy. It's like they let it all go. It was cool for a little while. And then somebody brought to my attention that others, you know, who this doesn't affect feels, I guess, disempowered or even guilty. So to that end, I always say, well, when you have this sort of feeling, please understand, you know, that temporary feeling of guilt is nothing compared to the long-term effects of, you know, constantly having to live with whatever this is. And for whatever temporal, the very, you know, these little nuggets of, let's discuss this for a while, keeps us happy and it keeps us alive and going. So if we can be angry here in these sort of safe spaces, it's a good thing for us, because otherwise, we have to live with this and constantly internalize it. And we have to constantly put on these masks. And being able to let go of the mask every so often, it really does feel good.
Well, Candis, you touched upon mobilizing around rage. Do you feel overall within the Black community we utilize rage to progress, or do you feel as if it handicaps us?
I think it depends on who, you know, in the work that I do, I realize that it's about facilitation, and it's about making sure that we're coming together and we're getting the right people together to talk about what are real life steps and objectives that will get us closer to the goal. I think when there's not a goal, then that rage can turn into destruction. That's when you see like people looting their own neighborhoods, right? Or people like burning things up and like everybody getting arrested. We did a lot of work in New York City, and after a young man was killed, like it ended up that like almost all of his family got arrested that night as they were protesting. That's not helpful, right? That didn't get us any bit further of getting any type of justice. It might have made people feel better in that moment to like take to the streets and like, you know, get stuff off their chest, but like if it's not progressing, if it's not getting us closer to a goal, then it's destructive, right? And so it's about making sure that we react instantly, because the people who have the tools to think through goals and objectives, we have to move fast. We have to, like, as soon as you feel like people are outraged and they want to do something, we need to bring those people together at that moment to talk about what are the steps that we should be taking. When you wait time, like I feel like with a lot of the older activists, they like wait for things to settle down, and they're like, all right, in 2 weeks when we can get everybody together, we're gonna sit down, we're gonna have a round table, and we're gonna talk about what we're gonna do. And I'm like, in 2 weeks? Those streets are towed up. People are mad right now. So like right now, we need to meet tomorrow at 7 o'clock, emergency meeting. What are we gonna do about this? And so it's about making sure you act right away, and you have the right, you make sure everybody has a seat at the table when you're just making that decision on what to do.
I think rage can mobilize if the community wasn't so like suffering from amnesia so often, because people forget, or people act like they forget. Like, because every year you get one of these cases,
Right.
and every year you get angry, and every year you do something, and then it's back to like memento, like you're waking up and you don't know what you just experienced yesterday. And like, for me, I feel like it's a talking point. It's become a talking point. Like being angry is just the default. Like people feel comfortable being there. So it's like you kind of like people are like they're waiting. Like you watch your Facebook feed, my Twitter feed, and my Instagram, and people are waiting for the verdict. And if this guy gets off, I don't know what I'm gonna do. And guess what they do? The same thing they did when the other guy got off. It's like they don't do anything. So like my thing is like when do people like mobilize in a way, even if it's a private mobilization. So for me, my thing is personally like talking to my nephews or whatever. But it's like I'm doing that even without the verdict. So like I don't wait for verdicts and things to arise for me to have these conversations. And so often people do. They go, what are we going to tell our black men? What have you been telling them before this? Like when did it take for a kid to get shot for you to go, wait, you know what, you're in danger? It's like, where were you living before this verdict that allowed you not to even navigate this before this situation happened? And I think a lot of times we wait till something happens to say something. And in between those times, we just kind of sit there and go like, look at the progress we're making. And then we go, look, we ain't come nowhere. Look at what just happened. It's like, where have you been living?
Do you believe there's faith, confidence, and solidarity within the black community? You don't even want to talk about that?
No, I'm just, because I think that the term black community, I don't even like academic terms, but I think it's the most problematic term there is. Because when people, when I get into conversations with a lot of my friends, they talk about Jewish communities, they talk about Chinatowns, and it's like, you talk about a black community. When you go to Williamsburg, those people are all Jewish. When you go, like Chinatown, they're Chinese. Black communities has a stratification of West Indians, of Africans, of black Americans from different regions. You can't call it Jamaican or Trinidadian, you can't call it Trinidadian Haitian, they will lose it. And it's like, there are real, like, stratifications amongst in a black community, and then reduce it to a black community. Is like, that is, to me, one of the most racial things we do all the time. We say, because we're all black and we occupy this space. Because in Bed-Stuy, most of the people don't even own the place they live, so what's black about it besides the faces that live there? And it shows you the inherent fear of a black space, because all you need for a black space to be a black space is not no economic power, just the presence. It's black. It's like, oh my God, it's black people, this is a dangerous neighborhood. And it's like, when you go to other communities, the reason why, like, you know, you have suburban areas that are homogeneous is because the economics is homogeneous, the education is homogeneous, everything about that. Like the police that like patrol in Suffolk County live in Suffolk County. The people that patrol in Bed-Stuy live in Long Island and in Westchester. There is no, like what community is that? And that's, so for me, like black community, there is no black community. And I think that that's a problematic term because it confuses people. Because it's like, I get into a lot of arguments, sincere arguments with my best friend's mother who's Guyanese, and she hates American black people because of the way she comes from in Guyana. And it's like, as a person not looking at that will look and go, there's two black people arguing. Whereas there's an American and there's a Guyanese person talking about real serious things that need to be hashed out, that can't be hashed out because we're worried about being black. And I think that if there was a more honest assessment of what a black community is, I think that would change what a black community becomes.
I think, not to discount anything you said or how your experience, I just think that that's sort of semantics, right? Because it's not about a physical community, it's about a people. Right. And I think while there is a lot of diversity amongst black people, when a cop beat somebody over the head, they didn't say, are you from Africa? Are you an African immigrant? Are you from here, from the West Indies? Or are you Guyanese? They see a black face and they decide you don't have power, and they decide they have more power than you, and what they are going to do to you, they're going to do to you, and you don't have nothing to do about it, right? So I think that the thing that unites us is that what's happening is happening across the board. It's happening in our schools. They're not saying, well, the people that occupy this school, even though they're black, they're predominantly from, west coast of Africa, and so we're going to treat them a different way than we treat the black Americans here. We're all the same. When they start to look at us in that context of like how policies affect us, it's all the same. And so it's about uniting. We have to understand our differences and respect our differences, and figure out how to unite despite our differences. But to other people, those differences don't matter. Right? At the end of the day, if they don't want to give you a job, they're not going to give you a job. They're not going to say, oh wait, you're Guyanese? Okay, no, you can have a job. I thought you was black American. So you can, since you're not from here, you can have this job. If you're black American, I was going to tell you leave, right? They don't say that. They see a black face, they decide you're not welcome here until you don't get the job. So that's, we need to figure out how to unify, even though we have differences, but other people look at us the same.
I guess all that makes me think too is, how do we celebrate that which makes us black, if you will. I think oftentimes when we talk about what unites us, it always comes down to some destructive policies, some really hard event that, it came out of a struggle. And then we're talking about Black History Month. And unfortunately, even Karji was like, listen, I want it to be a week, but at the end of the day, I kind of want this to be over so we can integrate this into because Black history is actually American history, and unfortunately we're still struggling with that. I often find that when we try to unite under something, we have to celebrate something, because it can't, as angry as I always am, I can't always just pin my whole community on, well, how did you react to Trayvon Martin? Were you mad or were you not? Right. And if you were, then you're down. But if you were not angry at all, like, really? Are you serious? Then get out. So those are the things I was...
out if they weren't angry.
Listen, fair enough. But I'm just saying, we need to find a little bit more, because the Cosby Show's been over for a little while too. So, yeah, I'm still struggling with that myself, as you can probably tell.
So on that note, does the black community need a healing? And if so, what can we do collectively?
Yeah, we need a healing. We need a lot more than the healing. Post-traumatic slave syndrome is real. And it's visible every day, but our healing has to come from inside our communities. I think we connect I was just talking to Yahdon earlier, I think collectively we connect in the wrong spaces. Like, the wrong things connect us. Like, for example, if you go to a black person anywhere in America and you say it's cold in the D, they know exactly what you're talking about. If you say, eat the cake, anime, every black person in America. So if there was something positive that connect us collectively, that would be good. But solidarity, it's far-fetched, but it's very possible. I see it happening soon. I don't know if it's going to happen in my time, but hopefully it will.
I think for the community to heal, it has to admit it has scars.
Right.
And the culture doesn't allow for that conversation. Like, I have conversations when I'm fighting my parents and my older siblings to get stories out of them because they hurt too much. So it's like they're holding history because of their personal gripes towards it. And like, to what you said, I agree with you, and I think that there's a point that the way other people look at us is how we begin to look at ourselves. So when we start to like, and it's a disrespectful thing, and it's like the reason why I understand the no generalizations, because you get to hone in on the actual problem. Because it's like when you look at the community, and it's like I used to call like all West Indian people Jamaican, and they would get so mad. And then and this is why I'm coming across with this, is because she had to sit me down and had to explain to me why that bothered her. And to me, it's like, we're all black, why does it matter? And she had to, it's a different culture, and it's like to at least appreciate those cultures, because those are things we don't even do. It's like I grew up when, you know, kids would call each other African booty scratcher, and that was the funniest like joke there was, and it made you negative towards like Africans. And Africa is not even one consistent, it's a body of it's a continent made of different countries, and the fact that we even call Africans is problematic. And we do it as black American people, so it's like we don't even address the things that we do. And then we like, and so for me, it's like to start healing, we have to start like, we actually hurt people, and that's one thing we won't admit. Or if we admit it, we go, it wasn't that bad. You'll get over it. It's like we downplay when we hurt, and that's like the whole cool pose thing. Like I'm alright. Like we never admit when we bothered by something, and that's a part of being cool and being black. It's like be cool, and it's like when do you admit that you hurt? And like we'll make fun of like the quote unquote stereotypical white kid, and Mom, you hurt my feelings. And we'll laugh at that. That's like all black comedy. That's the joke. But then it's like, well, we got hurt that we won't admit to. And it's like when there's healing for other people because they admit they're hurt, we're not doing that because we won't admit that. And I feel like the healing can only start when people admit that they've been hurt.
Yahdon, you mentioned earlier how your work in the community starts with the people that you know, like your nephews. Mm-hmm. So if we're going to talk about the babies, what are your hopes for black children? What are your hopes for black youth culture? Jose, we can start with you if you want to jump into that one. I know you want to do the last one.
I mean, more than anything, I just think about how me as a male of color walking into a classroom where there's either high expectations or low expectations. Teaching math is one of those deal breakers when it comes to trying to have options, because that's really what it's about. Education is about trying to get as many options as possible. So if you only teach a certain way, then you give very little options to children. And you know, for me, I find myself even just standing there is, you know, it's a plus for a lot of my students because they don't see a lot of me. They don't see a lot of people who have graduated college, have done grad school, are still successful, aren't, you know, and I'm not doing all this XYZ math. Again, not respectability politics, but they haven't seen a different model. They haven't had a different option. So that's one part. But then the other part is about elevating what they do. So, okay, I may not necessarily get you to pass this statewide exam or whatever have you, but the things that I'm going to give you are going to be things that you will need carrying you through high school, then carrying you through college, and hopefully later on in life. And a lot of my alumni attest to that, so I'm very happy for that. So those are things that I think about. How do you enter into a room full of children who, you know, are, you know, impressionable, and then how do you then take whatever attention you get and then turn it into something even more beautiful and powerful, and hopefully, you know, it heals something.
Yeah, for me, I think what I want for our young black and brown children is real equity. I think something you touched on earlier was about patriotism and how can you feel patriotic about a country that has excluded you. But when you think about the principles of this country, it's about freedom, and it's about access and accessibility and about upward mobility, just not for some people, right? And so I want to see a world where it's for everybody. Well, everybody actually has a shot at having the life they want and they deserve, and it's not just for some people, right? And that's what I want for our young people. I want a person who wants to do well and wants to succeed, and I want them to have all the opportunities that everybody else has.
Right.
That's something I feel.
What does well look like? What do you mean when you say well?
Economic justice, people, I mean, when you think about wealth and you think about what allows people to have power, it's about, you know, having wealth, it's about having access to education. And when we look at how our system is set up currently, there are people who don't have access to those things. When you go to schools and people are being forced to either take a standardized test that they can't pass, that has never been created for them, or you have people who are being pushed out of school because they have a bad attitude and the teacher just can't teach them, and so now they're suspended, and now they're in the same communities that riddled with all this drugs and all this other stuff. They don't have access to opportunities. And so when you look at what ends up happening to those people, they're in the system, they're dealing with all kinds of other stuff that prevents them from gaining wealth, prevents them from having a life that they can pass on. When I think about my father who worked hard all of his life and had no house to pass on to us when he passed away, that's sad. All of my white friends were like, oh, my parents gave me their house, or when my mom passed away, we got to settle, we got money. There was no insurance plan. We had to pull together just to bury my father, right? And that's not the situation for other people. And unfortunately, I hate capitalism. There's a lot of problems with it. But wealth in this society is how you start to move ahead. And if people don't have access to that, it's never going to be equitable. It's never going to be fair.
Well, I think more than economically, socially, our babies have to know the truth. So coding is very important. They need to know, post-racial is a myth. Colorblind is a myth. Black-on-black crime is a myth. I think they need to know reality. They need to know that there is a chance that you may outperform this student, but you may not get into that college. I think if they expect these realities, it'll be less discouraging than what it actually is. So I think they need to know chances are you will be harassed by police. You may be killed by police. They have to know these things, because if they're not prepared for it, this causes hazards. Like a kid walking in the street doesn't know cops can kill him and he'll die. I think our kids need to know these truths, and I think that's where that's what I could give to our children. I think this is the most important thing they need, even more than knowing economics. They need to know harsh realities.
For me personally, with my nieces and nephews, my thing is for the youth is making things real to them. Finances, making it real. So when I went into McDonald's with my nephew, he sold me with a coupon, and he had known his uncle to never use coupons. So he was like, "Why are you using a coupon?" And I was like, "Dude, it's real out here." And I had sat him down, and I showed him how much I get paid a week. And he was like, "Oh, that's a lot of money." And I said, "Wait a minute." Took the taxes out. And I explained what taxes were. And I just took the rent out. And I took the phone bill, the Metro card. He was like, "Oh my God." And in his head, I was like, he's got to see, so you don't really have any money. And I was like, "Yeah." And then he goes, "Oh, okay, let's use that coupon." So for me, and the same thing I did is took him to Columbia, took him to Pace, took him to NYU, all the schools I went to. So he can see what that's like. Because I didn't know what Columbia, Pace, NYU, none of these institutions were until I got there. And there was nobody to help me navigate that. Because there was nobody that been through that. So for him, it's for the least I can do for my nephews and my nieces and my little sisters is make it real for them. They know somebody that's gone through it and they've seen it. They've been there. So if I take them there, if nothing else, if my nephew goes through anything in life, he can say, "I remember when I was 12 and my uncle took me to Columbia University." And having that is more than what I had. And that's the only thing you could do. I think we get so hung up on trying to have the super solution. The catch-all solution, how do we save everybody? It's how do you just at least get one thing across that wasn't there before? And my thing is if at least you know what taxes are and how a paycheck just goes to nothing, that's more than what I had. Because when I got my paycheck, I'm like, "It's on," and then it was it's off. Because this is all our money. And now that I know that, my mother never discussed finances with us because we was raised on Section 8 welfare, so there was no finance to discuss. The state dealt with everything. They paid everything. So the fact that I can even pay bills is that's a pride thing for me. Because there was a time when we had to call HRA, we had to sit in HUD, we had to sit in Section 8 for 7 hours for all that stuff. For me to be able to sit with my nephew and even tell him that I'm paying a bill, that's to me is yes. Because for him it's okay, well my uncle pays bills, so he does it, and it's that's the only thing I can give. It's a real example. Not like I said, I keep coming to the phantoms, and it's a real person that you can look at and go, "He's doing it," or "She's doing it."
So on the heels of Valentine's Day, we're going to talk about Black love. As a black person, how hard is it for us to love ourselves? And do you love yourself because you are Black or despite being Black?
I think we need to love ourselves and we need to love each other, and that's the most important thing. But it's hard to love yourself. Not to play into the colorism issue, but especially a dark-skinned Black person in America is really hard because you don't see positive images of yourself, especially women. You know, you get called names and, you know, you get compared to this woman, and when you do see images, it's usually, you know, the quintessential light-skinned video girl with this long flowing hair. So a lot of young black girls, they look towards that, and then they start doing detrimental things like bleaching their skin, and you know, so it has to be a collective effort. You know, I usually say when you see a dark-skinned little black girl, tell her, you know, you're beautiful. Tell her, you know, your hair is beautiful, or you know, disregard what you saw in that video. But it's hard, especially in America. It's hard to love yourself because this place has proven to us that we can't be lovable. That's about it.
I would just point to Marvin Gaye's discography, and how he created anthems. I mean, God, like you think about What's Going On, you think about
Right.
Hear My Beer. Like every album was there was love there. But then you listen to his, you know, biography. You read his biography during those album periods, and you're just like, man, that hurt. So you know, there's always that action reaction, that push pull. Like he put so much love into his albums and his music, and yet what came out in his personal life was often very much the opposite. It was very painful to watch. So I wonder if there's a way to talk about love in that Marvin Gaye respect, where it's like it hurts so much the love for him that he had to like hate himself so often.
I just think that, you know, we definitely need to love ourselves, but I definitely think we need to start to love our brothers and sisters. And even if we can't get to love yet, we can start with like, there's nothing that aggravates me more than being in a space and it's just like you and another black person, and you like give them like the, hey, I see you, my sister, and they look at you like, we ain't together. And you can be like, gone for a second, like, we the only ones in here, hello. So I just think that we need to start to acknowledge each other and be friendly towards one another, and we can't love each other, let's start with like.
I think separating romance from love, and those are two different things. And a lot of people have romantic ideas about what love is supposed to be versus like what love actually is. And like I watched my brother and my sister-in-law married for 14, 15 years since they were 17, and I seen what love looks like and explaining that. Because there's no, like, that movie isn't really talked about. You got your notebooks and you got your, you got your movies like, oh yes, this is beautiful. I want to follow you on a train and write letters to you. Love don't always look like that.
Right.
And it's like explaining, like separating, like if you don't get that, that does not mean you're not being loved. Because people chase that romantic and they don't get the real love, and then they're wondering like, why is it not working? It's like you have to work for that. And for me, like my nieces and nephews, like I have a little 5-year-old niece, dark-skinned little girl. She came into school one day and she was like, I don't like this boy. And we were like, why? She was like, because he's fat and black. She's 5 years old. And none of us taught her that. So she's learned that at school. So it's like, how do you equip her to navigate that by herself? Because we can sit here and we can play the Black is Beautiful game in the house, but when she's going to school, she's being reminded that, yeah, you're not that pretty because you're not light-skinned.
Right.
And I remember growing up and liking the light-skinned girls too, so I'm not even above it in the sense that I remember growing up with the same mentality. So it was like finding ways to, catch them on their ways of why do you think that, and trying to see how she thinks that way, and like really explaining to her like, the way you think these things are, you have to like stop thinking that way. And it's really, it's not really an easy answer. It's like a situational, like catching it at certain points, and just like hoping you give. My thing is just hoping to give something that changes the mind a little bit, and that's all that we do. But my main thing is separating the romance from the love. Like love is something you work for. Romance is something that you kind of just like, it's something that you want to control. Like you want to control the ideas of your relationship and what you expect from somebody. But love is like something like I'm gonna take it, how it comes, and work towards something better.
So our final question before we move to the Q&A section. What responsibility, if any, do you feel towards inspiring tolerance and acceptance of diversity and promoting love for all people?
Well, quoting again, it depends what space you're in when you say diversity. Because honestly, diversity in a lot of spaces, it just means we let a few of you in this space, a few of you into this space because, in the name of diversity. But Well, reading plays a big part of it, because the more you read, the more you understand. Literature plays a big part in it, actually, because I can understand a different group of people by reading what somebody, from that side or from that race or that type of person wrote. It helps understand a lot. There are a million different barriers that have to be broken.
Just going back to really thinking about we don't always have to all be the same too. That's what I think often happens, is that people think, well, diversity means we're gonna acculturate you, or we're gonna make you exactly the same in order for you to gain anything. It's about being able to say, all right, well, you're different, you have different needs, and we'll have to accept you as you are because you are part of us. And that's a whole different conversation than saying, we're gonna pull you in, but only if you do this, this.
Right.
Only if you knock out some of this, you don't do this. Even, let's just go even to the gender issue, where you're gonna say, oh, well, we pay you less because we know that you have different needs, versus being like, we have to pay you exactly the same as a man because you're doing the same exact job. You can have different needs, but it's gotta work this way because this is exactly what we want to pay you because you are worth this much. And unfortunately, that conversation isn't happening often enough, even if people meet the set requirements for whatever the job qualification is.
This is the hardest question yet. I don't feel a responsibility to inspire others towards tolerance for all. I think I do feel a responsibility to inspire young Black people, at least, to have respect and tolerance for one another. I do feel a responsibility to do that. I do a lot of work with young people, especially around like workshops and know your rights, and it's about making sure they understand each other and the differences amongst each other and how to tolerate and respect one another. But I don't know if I feel a responsibility for everyone to do that. I don't even know how we'll go about doing that. It's definitely not my job. I don't even pay them.
No, I agree. I work within my circle. Like I used to have that when I was 15, 16, like I'm gonna change the world attitude, and I didn't like abandon that. It's like your world is contingent upon where you are, and it's like sometimes you get so focused on changing that, it's like you have family members you don't see enough. So my thing is like trying to take care of my family and my friends and the people that I'm in my circle, because if you are effective to like 1 million people, but then the 6 people that didn't know you, like, oh, he never came to the cookouts. We don't even see this dude, but you like changing the world. But it's like the people that you came up with aren't really, like, you're not affecting them. It's like, what are you really doing? So for me, it's like, how can I affect my circle as much as possible? And it's like my circles are like you say, Douglas, in different spaces. Like I'm in the Jewish fraternity, and I was raised Jewish, and I get into a lot of conversations about being Jewish because I don't look Jewish. So they go, oh, so you're done? Like, so you do the Sabbath? I'm like, yes. You do Yom Kippur? Like, they go, But it's like that conversation now changes what they think about when they think about the Jewish person. Because I get the thing of, oh, you're an Israelite. I'm like, no, I'm not. Because it's like the racial connotations of what Judaism, what authentic Judaism looks like. I don't look like that. But if I don't have that conversation, he doesn't change. She doesn't change. So for me, it's like I attack what's in my circle, and then hopefully it ripples out. Like that's all I can really do. Like I'm done with the trying to change the world. I'm changing my world, and then hopefully somebody else changes theirs.
I just wanted to go back on that love word that I love so much, only because this is love. The fact that you're here and you're talking, this is the best form of love. To communicate openly about something that you care about, that's the best kind of love there is. And to be able to listen to other people's viewpoints, that's the best kind of love there is. I think, I'm going to steal from the Greeks and say that there is eros, love, which is romantic love. There is philia, which is brotherly, sisterly, kinship love. And then there's agape. And agape is divine love, the kind of love that transcends you and him and her and us. It's living, breathing love. And when you walk out there today, if you really walk with love, you can't possibly be mad. And I was hoping that someone would touch on the difference between angry and rage. Because Maya Angelou has a beautiful quote where she says, bitterness eats at the core like cancer. But anger fuels and it burns it down clean. Because bitterness will eat at you and you start to grow resentment towards other people, towards white people or towards, Guyanese people or West Indian people, okay? But anger fuels you to do better. And like Candis says, fuels you to take action and fuels you to think differently every single day when you walk. So everything you do is love. Every day that you walk is love. Thank you so much. I love you all.